travel far in the air. They only travel approximately 1 meter and quickly settle on surfaces. This is the reason person-to-person spread is happening mainly between close contacts. The exact time that the virus can survive on surfaces is not yet known. Any surfaces which can be contaminated with the virus. You should therefore avoid touching your eyes, nose or mouth, since contaminated hands can transfer the virus from the surface to yourself. When coughing or sneezing, cover your mouth and nose with the bend of your elbow or use a disposable tissue. If a tissue is used, discard it immediately into a closed bin. The most effective way to prevent the spread of the new coronavirus is to clean your hands frequently with an alcohol-based hand rub or soap and water. This will eliminate the virus if it is on your hands. Stay healthy and prevent the spread of COVID-19.
Blood ties that bind.
Nothing makes me happier than making this family happy.
A family bound by love.
I married her because I love her. And there's nothing that you or Rose can do to stop that.
Loyalty and legacy.
Be the general surgeon I trained you to be.
And is that the only way I'll be a true daughter to you?
Plagued by jealousy.
This is the last time that I forgive you.
Secrets.
They will see their proud name falling apart.
I wonder who is he talking to?
And desires.
What could be more urgent than your own sister's wedding dinner?
Watch the drama unravel.
Not everything is about you. This is my hospital.
In Masego Ties.
Welcome back to the third subject of the day. We're learning science for Form 3s. With me in studio today is Lindiwe Fagute, who is going to be teaching the Form 3s science. And alongside is Linda Mamba and Zanele Mota, who are going to be our sign language interpreters. Good afternoon and welcome to Home Study, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Lerato. How are you?
I'm great, ma'am. Please tell us about today's objectives, what you'd like the learner to have learned by the end of the lesson.
Okay. Before, Lerato, we get to the objectives, I want learners to appreciate and to understand the properties of waves, as these properties of waves are important in our daily life. You know that, Lerato, as I speak, you are able to hear me. Why? Because of waves. Viewers at home are able to see us live on TV. Why? Because of waves. Even those who are listening to the radio, they're able to hear what is being said on radio because of waves. So waves play a pivotal role in our everyday life.
Interesting indeed, ma'am. So Form 3s, today you're going to be learning about waves and light. So stay back as Ms. Fagute takes you on.
Thank you, Lerato. By the end of the lesson, learners, you should be able to describe the sources and properties of light. You should also be able to describe the actions of a thin converging and diverging lenses on a parallel beam of light. Thirdly, learners at home, you should be able to list the properties of a real image. Also, you should be able to describe wave motion and then distinguish between transverse and longitudinal waves. And lastly, you should be able to describe the production of sound. You should be able to describe the production of sound. That is the last objective. So learners, it is important to know that light enables us to see. And there are different sources of light as they are shown in the diagram. These sources of light, they are being detected by our eyes. And our eyes are our sensory organs. Sources of light, as you can see, we have the sun, we have stars, we have light bulbs, fire, lamps, lighter, candlelight, as well as flame by matches. All these sources, they are able to emit light, hence enable us to see other objects. And then learners, it is important to know now the properties of light. Light is reflected. So which means that the next property, it is the reflection of light. What is reflection of light? Before we get to the definition of reflection, learner at home, you should understand that in the morning, when you get up, when you look through the mirror, you are able to see an image through the mirror. Why? Because of this property, which is reflection. One then may wonder, what exactly then is reflection? Reflection, dear learner at home, it is the bouncing back of a rays of light as they strike on a surface. It is the bouncing back of rays of light as they strike on a surface. It is important to understand that shiny or polished objects such as a mirror, they do what? They reflect light in one direction. And when this light is reflected in one direction, we have a regular pattern of reflection, which is known as regular reflection. It is also important, dear learner, to understand the law of reflection. So I shall explain the law of reflection as I talk about our next slide. This is the reflection, dear learner, that I'm talking about. Remember, I said reflection is the bouncing back. Reflection is the bouncing back of light rays as they strike onto a surface, which means that in reflection there should be an incoming ray. As you can see in the diagram, dear learner at home, we are having this ray which is moving towards the surface of the mirror. This is the mirror. Excuse me for that. Towards the surface of the mirror. Yes. So this is the mirror, dear learner. So this ray is incoming, meaning that it is going onto the surface and it strikes onto the surface. So when it strikes onto the surface, what happens is that it bounces back. As it bounces back, it produces another ray, leaving the surface. So the arrows, dear learner, in our diagram show the direction of movement. So in the first one, we have this ray which we call the incident ray. Please take note, dear learner, the incoming ray striking onto the surface of our mirror, it is known as the incident ray. And then in the diagram, you are also able to see a line which is perpendicular to the surface of the mirror. That line is perpendicular because it touches the mirror surface at an angle, and that angle is 90 degrees. And in between the normal and the incident ray, we have an angle. And that angle, dear learner at home, it is labeled angle I. Please note, when you are writing the symbol for this letter, you are using small letter I. It is the angle of incidence. Please take note of that. It is the angle of incidence. There is the angle between the normal, and the incident ray. And then we have this reflected ray, which I said it is the ray shown leaving the surface of the mirror. And when it leaves the surface of the mirror, it produces an angle. And that angle, it is found between the normal and the reflected ray. So that angle, dear learner, it is labeled small letter r, and it is known as the angle of reflection. Please note, dear learner, that the ray, we call it incident ray. That is the incoming ray. We call it incident ray. And then the angle between the incident ray and the normal, we call it the angle of incidence. Please note, at the end of the word, there is incidence. At the end is NCE instead of NT from incident. The ray is incident, ENT, and the angle between that ray, that is the incident ray, and the normal, it is the angle of incidence. That is the angle between the normal and the incidence and the incident ray. And then the angle between the reflected ray and the normal, which I said it is denoted by small letter r, that is the angle of reflection. Okay, that is the one property, of light, dear learner, which is reflection. Remember, I said when at home you are looking through the mirror, you see what we call an image, and that image is produced as a result of reflection, and it has got certain properties. And these properties are, the first one is that it is upright. The image is upright. Let us look at this diagram. This diagram, as you can see, dear learner, it is showing our object, which is a person standing in front of a mirror. And when the person is looking through the mirror, the person sees her image. So this is the object, and this is the image. This is the image. So we said the image produced by a plane mirror, it is upright, as you can see, dear learner. The second property is that the image is the same. Please note, it is the same size as the object. The image is the same size as the object. As you can see, image and objects, they are of the same size. The image is said to be virtual. What does that mean, dear learner? It means that the image form, cannot be produced on a screen, meaning that it is not real. So we say it is virtual. The next property is that the image is laterally inverted. So when we say the image is laterally inverted, as you can see in our diagram, dear learner at home, you see the object, that is the person looking through the mirror. The person is raising her right hand, but in the mirror it appears like the person is raising her left hand. The person is raising her left hand, and that property, it tells us that the image and the object appear to be interchanged. That is what we say scientifically, it is laterally inversion. So the image is laterally inverted. The next property, it has to do with the image distance from the mirror with reference to the object distance from the mirror. So what you need to take note of is that the image distance not from anywhere, but from the mirror, is equal to the object distance from the mirror. Image distance from the mirror is equal to the object distance from the mirror. Those, dear learner, are the properties of an image which is formed by a mirror. Please note, we said that such an image, it is formed by a plane mirror. Why? Because there is a reflection of light. There is a reflection of light. Now, dear learner, I want us to move on to another property of light. And that property of light that I want us to move on to, it is the refraction of light. Refraction of light. This property, dear learner, we see it in our everyday life. You know, when you take a stick and you put it in a glass of water, what you see or what you observe is that it appears to be bent. Yet we know that actually it is not bent. But it appears to be bent. Why? Because of refraction. And then one may wonder as to what exactly then is that refraction we are talking about. This refraction that we're talking about, dear learner, it is the bending of light. It is the bending of light when it travels from one medium into another medium. That is refraction. It is the bending of light when it travels from one medium into another medium. The bending is as a result of a change in speed as the light moves at an angle from one optical medium into another. So the refraction can also can be observed when light passes from air into water, or when light passes from water into air. It can also be observed when the light passes from air into glass, and when light passes from glass into air. So the bending, dear learner, it is different. What you should take note of, dear learner, at home is that in our diagram, as you can see, the diagram is going to help us understand as to what exactly is this refraction, what exactly is this bending the teacher is talking about. So in our first diagram, dear learner, we are having one medium, this one, it is the medium A. And then we are having another medium that is below the medium that I've just labeled A. This medium, it is water. So these two media, dear learner at home, they are different when it comes to their optical density. So the ray of light in the diagram, it is white. This white ray, it is moving from A, as I've labeled in the diagram, it is moving from A into water. So which means that it is moving from a less dense medium into a more dense medium. It is moving from a less dense medium, which is A, moving into less dense medium A, moving into a more dense medium, which is water. What happens, dear learner, is that the ray bends towards the normal. The normal, it is the line which is perpendicular to the surface, meaning that it touches the surface at 90 degrees. So there is our normal, which is dotted in our diagram. That is the normal. It is dotted in our diagram. Let me just remove so that the diagram is clear. Okay, and then here, remember I said if it moves from a less dense medium into a more dense medium, it bends towards the normal. So which means that the angle of incidence, dear learner, the angle of incidence, let me just label it here. It is the angle I, small letter I. That is the angle of incidence. The angle of incidence in this case, it is greater than the angle of refraction. So it is angle I. The angle I, in this case, it is between the incident ray, this ray being incident, this one being incident, and the one in the other medium, it is the refracted one. This is the refracted ray. This is the refracted ray. So when that happens from a less dense medium to a more dense medium, it bends towards the normal, meaning that the angle I, which is the angle of incidence, is greater than the angle R. So its angle I, which is the angle of incidence, is greater than the angle R, which is the angle of refraction. But if it happens, dear learner, now that the ray of light is now moving from a more dense medium into a less dense medium. Now it is moving from a more dense medium. It is moving from a more dense medium this medium is more dense. It is more dense. This is a more dense medium. It is moving from a more dense medium, which in this case it is the water. So now it is moving from water into air. From water into air. It is moving from a more dense medium into a less dense medium. What you should note, dear learner, is that ray of light, it bends away from the normal. So when a ray of light moves from a more dense medium into a less dense medium, more dense medium, in our diagram, our example, it is water. Our example, it is water. And the less dense medium in our diagram, it is air. So it bends away from the normal. Let me remind you, dear learner, that the normal, it is the line which is perpendicular to the surface. It is perpendicular to the surface. That is our normal. So in this case, what happens is that the angle of incidence, which is our angle I, in this case, it is less than the angle of refraction. The angle of incidence, it is less than the angle of refraction. Just so to remind you, dear learner at home, remember angle of incidence being I, and the angle of refraction being R. So let me just sum this up, dear learner. When a ray of light moves from a less dense medium to a more dense medium, it bends towards the normal. But when it moves from a more dense medium into a less dense medium, it bends away from the normal, as this is being depicted by our diagrams, dear learners. It is important to note, dear learners at home, that this refraction that we've been talking about, it occurs in glass lenses. the refraction occurs in glass lenses. And these lenses, they are shaped in such a way that they refract light. So which means that when rays of light moves to the glass lenses that I'm talking about, they are going to do what? They are going to bend. And it is important to note, dear learners, that the glass lenses, they are found in many instruments that we use in our everyday life. We have lenses which are found in microscopes. We have lenses which are found in cameras. We have lenses which are found in spectacles, etc. It is important, dear learner, to note that we have two types of lenses. We have the converging lens, otherwise known as the convex lens. And we also have diverging lens, otherwise known as concave lens. It is important to note that in our eyes we have converging lens. You're going to see these lenses, dear learner at home, as we progress with our lesson. Now, let us look at the properties of the lenses. But before we look at the properties of lenses, dear learner, I want us to look at the actions of these lenses on a beam of light. Remember, I mentioned that we have two types of lenses. We have the converging lens, which is known as the convex lens, and that is the converging lens or the convex lens. And we also have the diverging lens, which is known as a concave lens. These two lenses, dear learner, they have different actions on the parallel beam of light. The converging lens, what happens to the converging lens is that it converges light rays to a point. Converging lens, which is the convex lens, in some corners is known as the convex lens, it converges light rays to a single point, meaning that the rays which are parallel before they get to the lens, when they get to the lens, they are refracted. And they are refracted in such a way that they're going to meet at a single point. And that point where they meet, the point where they meet, we call that point the focal point. The focal point, which in our diagram is depicted as capital letter F, it is the point where the rays meet. It is the point where the rays meet, or where the rays converge. And the focal point is depicted, or it is symbolized by a capital letter F. Also, dear learner, in our diagram, you will notice that we have a point. This is the point which is found at the center of the lens, or it is found at the midpoint of the lens. And that point, it is what we call the optical center. It is what we call the optical center, which is being denoted by a capital letter P. It is found at the midpoint, or it is found central. It is the center of the lens. That is the optical center, capital letter P. And when you look at the diagram, dear learner, you will observe that, let me just remove this because it is going to confuse us. We'll observe that there is a line. This is the line. Excuse me for that. There is a line which passes through the center. There is a line which passes through the center, and that line, it is known as the principal axis. The line is known as the the principal axis. Also, dear learner, when you look at the diagram, you will notice that we have a distance between the optical center, which is this point, and the focal point. And the distance between those 2 points, it is what we call the focal length. It is what we call the focal length. As we mentioned, dear learner, that a convex lens or a converging lens, what happens? It converges light rays to a point. And then the other lens, it is the diverging lens. The diverging lens, what happens is that it diverges the light rays. As you can see here, we're having this parallel rays of light. We're having this parallel rays of light, but when they get to the thin diverging lens or the concave lens, that diverged or they moved to different direction. But please note that the one which passes through the center, it passes through unaffected. It is important, dear learner, to notice that we have an image which is formed by the convex lens, otherwise known as a thin converging lens. The image there, it has got certain property. The image, it can be projected on the screen. It can be projected on the screen, and it is said to be real. As you can see in the diagram, thus being the object and thus being the image is inverted, and it is formed at the actual intersection of the light rays. Those are, dear learner, were the properties of the image that are formed by a converging lens. And it is important to note that we have transverse wave and we have longitudinal waves. And these longitudinal waves, they are found in wave motions. Longitudinal waves, it is where longitudinal waves, it is when we have the vibrations of the medium moving parallel to the movement of the wave. But with that transverse wave, dear learner, we have the vibrations moving perpendicular to the direction of vibration. So those are the differences between the two types of waves. I hope, dear learner, this lesson has been helpful to you as we've discussed light and we've touched on the transverse wave. Thank you, Loretta.
Yes, ma'am, there's also 2 questions from the viewer. One says, can it be possible that the angle of incidence cannot be equal to the angle of reflection? And then the other says, please repeat the law of reflection.
Okay, thank you, Loretta. Okay, the law of reflection, dear learner, it states that the angle of incidence is equal to the angle of reflection. The law of reflection states that the angle of incidence is equal to the angle of reflection. So the law is obeyed. More especially, it is obeyed when there is regular reflection, where we have angle I, which is the angle of incidence, being equal to angle of reflection. Thank you, Loretta.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am, for being with us, and thank you to the viewer for watching. Up next is my colleague Nogwasi, who is going to be taking the Form 5s on their lessons.
thanks to a spot of AI, he's actually about to present the news in various different languages, ones that he can't actually speak.
Mis padres llegaron al Reino Unido en 1959.
我英语之外什么都不会说。
आपसे देखना चाहता हूँ कि ये कैसे काम करता है।
I'm very happy to be working with the BBC on a children's program. As a mother, I just am so happy I'll have something I can sit with my children and watch and know that they're getting a real international sense of the world as well.
Kids, wash your hands so you can come in and have lunch.
Okay, Mom.
Tabo, apply some soap. You shouldn't just use water only.
But my hands aren't dirty, Nolwazi.
Just because your hands don't look dirty doesn't mean they're clean. We need to wash our hands regularly with soap and running water for at least 20 seconds, just like teacher taught us, so that all virus-causing germs and bacteria are washed away.
Tabo, listen to your sister, baby. It's important to always wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Like right now before we eat, after using the toilet, after touching animals, or after changing a nappy. We must also clean our surfaces and toilet seats with disinfectant.
Guys, it's time to wash our hands, wash our hands, wash our hands. Dirt and germs don't stain a chance. Germs bye-bye. First the water, then the soap, and you scrub all your palms. Scrub your fingers till they're clean. Rinse and dry.
Guys, I'm home.
Welcome back, honey.
This is your 1 p.m. news update brought to you by Victor Silombo. In the news today, we'll speak a little bit more about COVID-19, a disease that's infectious and causing problems all over the world. COVID-19 is an infectious disease caused by the coronavirus. The disease can spread from person to person through small droplets from the nose or mouth, which are spread when a person with COVID-19 coughs or exhales. These droplets land on objects and surfaces around the person, and other people then catch COVID-19 by touching these objects and surfaces, then touching their eyes, nose, or mouth. Here's a few simple precautions that you can follow to reduce your chances of being infected or spreading COVID-19. Regularly and thoroughly clean your hands with an alcohol-based hand rub or wash them with soap and water. Cover your mouth and nose with your flexed elbow or use a tissue when you cough or sneeze. Then dispose of that used tissue immediately in a dustbin. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Maintain a social distance of at least 1 meter between yourself and everyone else. Drink copious amounts of water to make sure your body is hydrated. And remember, if you develop a fever, a cough, or have difficulty breathing, call 977. Stay safe, stay home.
Kids, I hope you are listening carefully. It's very important that we take these precautions very seriously, so we all avoid catching or spreading COVID-19. So, we must stay home for our safety. Okay?
Yes, Dad.
Imagine.
A very warm welcome to our viewers, and if you have just joined us, I am Nogwazi Dlamini and this is Home Study, and right at this moment we are doing the Form 5 physics class, and with me in the studio is Mr. Mfanbela Mkonda. Sir, welcome back. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Nolozi, even today. And how are you?
I'm good, sir. And by the way, just to correct you, it's Nogwazi.
Nogwazi.
Yes, K, not L.
All right.
So, can you please tell us what today's topic is and what you hope the learner to have learned by the end of this topic?
Again, today we are still continuing the discussion on electricity, which is, of course, a very important topic. Have you ever imagined a day without electricity?
It's those days when they happen, it's horrible, I might say.
So
yes.
I think electricity is one of the things that it's a greatest stride that man has taken in the discovery of the production of electricity.
Okay.
So we're looking at electricity, but we're going to look at now the details that are in our gadgets. So as we're using the gadgets, we want to see what is happening inside there in terms of the resistors and other components in those gadgets. So how they are connected. You could also think of the lighting in the houses. The way they arrange the light bulbs. There's a special way of arranging them in order for them to work properly. So we're going to be looking at how those components are connected in the connections in our components and other things.
All right, yes. Mr. Mkonda. Okay, Form 5s, I hope that you are ready. And just to remind you, we are live on YouTube and on Facebook. And if you have any questions, you may direct them to our WhatsApp number. Mr. Mkonda, you may go ahead.
Thank you, Nogwazi. New learner at home, welcome back to our favorite subject in physics. We are looking at the resistors. As we have said, we're looking at how the resistors are connected in our components. We have our objectives here. It's quite bulky, but that should not scare you. We're going to cover almost everything. We want to look at the following. We must be able to state that current is the same in every point in what we call a series circuit. We want to state that for a parallel circuit, current from the source is larger than the current at each branch. We also be able to determine the combined resistance for two or more resistors connected in series. State that the combined resistance for two resistors in parallel is less than either resistor by itself. We're also going to look at, we'll recall and use the fact that the sum of potential difference across the components in a series circuit is equal to the total PD across the source. Like I've said, it's quite bulky, we still have more. Recall and use the fact that current from the source is the sum of currents in the separate branches in the parallel circuit. Calculate the effective resistance of two resistors connected in parallel. And we are also going to recall and use the fact that the potential difference across the separate branches of a parallel circuit is equal to the PD across the battery. So those are the objectives we want to cover there. Now what we'll need, we're going to be doing some calculations. So you people at home, make sure you have your calculators, but it's just basic mathematics. We're not going to be looking at something very difficult, but there's a lot of calculations that we're going to be looking at. And please, Ohm's law is going to be used a lot in our discussion. So let us look at series circuits. So we have two ways of connecting. One of them is series. So when we are connecting the components in series, so we are talking about components, it could be resistors, but in my diagram, like you've seen, I've got some light bulbs, but this could be resistors as well. So you can think of them as resistors because this could be used. The light bulbs can represent resistors as well. So it could be a resistor, it could be a light bulb, as you can see. So I'm going to be using a light bulb as we have in my diagram there. So when they're connected in series, in this case, what happens is the components are connected directly one after the other. So we have a light bulb. After that light bulb, you have another one. So there's one after the other, making what we have as a complete loop. So if I move from the cell and I move around, so if I move from the cell and I move around, I'm making a complete loop. There's no gap. So when I move from this side to that side, I pass through this light bulb or resistor, I pass through this resistor, and then we say those are connected in series. If they are two, of course, we're just talking about these two for an example. Now, in this case, the components are set to be connected in series if the same, so they're set to be connected in series if the same current passes through each in turn. So if we have 3 amps as a total current, the 3 amp current is going to pass through the first lamp or the first resistor. So we have 3 amps passing through here. We still have the same current passing through this one. So we have the same current passing through those resistors or our lamps in this case. And then we say those are connected in series. Now if we want to represent that mathematically, we can have it like in this case here. So if I have this as my total current, and then I have current, this is the total current, and then I have current through bulb 1, so I have current through bulb 2. So we can represent that mathematically by this equation. IT, which is the total current, is equal to I1 is equal to I2. So the current is the same throughout. So that's one of the facts that we need to have with resistors connected in series. There are other things that we want to look at again in series. Let us look at the voltage. Now, they will still have our light bulbs or our resistors connected now still in series, but now we want to concentrate on the voltage. So this is our total voltage as supplied by the battery. So the current that is going to be passing through here will pass through one of them in turn, as we have said. But let us look at the potential So the potential drop that we are going, potential difference that we're going to have at this point compared to the potential difference that we're going to have at this point. The voltage, total voltage, is going to be equal to the sum of the voltages in each individual resistor. Put this again mathematically, of course, this is what we're going to have. So we're going to have our total voltage being equal to voltage 1, which means it's through resistor 1, plus voltage 2, which means it's through resistor 2. Those are the facts that we need to have in mind when we're talking about our resistors connected in series. Now, what about the resistance itself? Now, we want to be asking, oh, teacher, we can see the current and the other things. What about the resistance itself? Now, the resistance, of course, is going to be, again, the same as the voltage. In this case, we have the resistance, which is R1 and R2. Now, we're thinking of the total resistance. Now, if we're thinking of the total resistance, would be probably thinking of the resistors here combined. So thinking of maybe the total resistance that would be having here. So now the question is, how are these related? So the total resistance here, so the total resistance here would be the sum of the two resistors. It's like these resistors are combined. So we're going to have the sum of the two resistors, if they are two, of course. So we're going to have mathematically again representing this as RT, which is your total resistance, is equal to R1 plus R2. That is how the resistance is related there. I think we've said quite a lot. Let us see how this can apply, and let us look at just a couple of examples together. So I have a question here which I want us to do together here. We want to apply the things that we've just talked about. Now here's our question. Jabulile connects the circuit as shown in figure 11.1. I took this from a question which was question 11. Now we have the setup, as you can see. Now calculate the total resistance in the circuit when switch S is closed. So when we close switch S, so when switch S is closed, now we want to calculate the total resistance when switch S is closed. So what does it mean? It means current now will start flowing through. Now what is the total resistance? I mean, what is the total resistance, of course, that we'll have there. Now this will take us back to what we have learned. We want to apply those facts that we have looked at. But there's one more question that we've got here. So we'll answer the questions after we've looked at both of them. What is the current in the circuit when switch S is closed? So we're going to be looking at the total resistance when switch S is closed, as well as the current when switch S is closed. So let us see how we can work that out. We're going to work that out together. So let's look at the solution. If you look at the diagram, you probably would have noticed that the resistors are connected in series. And we've just said when the resistors are connected in series, when the resistors are connected in series, we use this relation that RT is equal to R1 plus R2. So we use that relation. So we're going to use that relation there. our resistors were 10 ohms and 15 ohms. So according to the relation that we've looked at today, those must be added because it is the sum of the resistors, and then we're going to get our 25 ohms, which is from your 10 plus 15. What about the other question that we've got there? Now, what is the current? Now, if you look at the question as we have had it there, it looks like now we are saying we have a total resistance. All these two resistors combined will give us 25 ohms. So what is the current that is passing through here? The voltage is given as 6 volts. So we're given the voltage as 6 volts. Now we're like saying, if I have 25 ohms, what current is passing through? Now we are given that the voltage is 6 and the resistance is 25 ohms. We need a formula that connects the two, and that formula is Ohm's law as we've learned it before. So by Ohm's law, we have V is equal to IR. Substituting there, you're going to have your 6 volts is equal to I, which is what we're looking for, multiplied by 25, which is given in the question, and that is going to give you your 0.24. Use your calculator to check that. You divide by 6 both sides, and that is what we've got there. I hope we are following on the resistors in series. Now I want us to look at the other method of connecting the resistors. If we're not connecting them in series, there's yet another way of connecting the resistors, and that is connecting the resistors in parallel. I want to talk about parallel in line with series. So I'm just going to draw a sketch of series here. So when I'm saying these resistors are connected in series, it means there's one after the other. Now let's look at this. If you were to take these resistors and connect them such that they are not following one after the other, and then we connect them in this way. Now they are connected in this way. Let's come back to our diagram and look at how they are connected. We're going to have resistor X. Instead of the other resistor following resistor X, it makes its own circuit, which is now through resistor Y, or it makes its own loop. So if you look at these resistors are connected in a way different from the series. And we say this is connected in parallel. If you were to think of your parallel in mathematics, we're having two parallel lines. So our resistors are kind of in a parallel manner if we were to simplify it that way. Now this method of connection is called connecting in parallel. Now what happens in this? Let us just analyze it like we did with the series. Resistors are connected in parallel when each resistor has its own circuit. Now teacher, what do you mean own circuit? Maybe some of you are asking me. We're saying it has its own circuit within the main circuit. Again, some of you are saying, teacher. So we have own circuit within the main circuit. In such a case, there are branches. I think now this explains the confusion. There are branches from the main circuit. So we're going to have X with its own loop. And then we're going to have Y with its own loop within the main circuit. So that is why we're saying each resistor has its own circuit within the main circuit. I think it makes sense. Resistor X makes its own circuit within the main circuit, and so does resistor Y. I think we're ready to continue and give more analysis onto that. Now let us analyze it again. Look at the voltage, look at the current, look at the resistance. Let's start with the voltage. Now in this case, again, I want you to be thinking of the series as well, because it makes a clear understanding if you're looking at them or side to side. Now we're looking at the parallel, but we said in series the voltage Vt is equal to V1 plus V2. You remember that one? Now let us compare it to this one. In this case, we are connecting them such that there is a branch here. So the voltage that you've got here, which is the total voltage, in this case, the total voltage will be the same. The voltage T will be the same as V1 as it is with V2. If there's V3, it's going to be the same thing. So I'm saying now Vt is equal to V1 is equal to V2. So if we have a certain amount of voltage here, it will be the same as V1, it will be the same as V2. I hope that makes sense. Let's move on to the next one. So we've seen the voltage. Let's talk about the current. Now the current is going to be flowing, and again take you to your series. So the same current was flowing through, but now the current that we have here is the total current would have to split at the branches. So part of the main total current will go there, and the other part will go there, depending of course on the resistor that you've got there. So now the current is going to split. Let's look at my example. So what I've got here is 5 amps as total current, and this 5 amps will split into 3 amps and 2 amps. Now what determines the amount of current would be the resistor, of course, but we're interested in the 2 amps and the 3 amps and the 2 amps. And we look at this. When the current passes through here, it splits, and then the current that we have that side is still the same as the total current. So we're saying the current will split according to the resistance. So what we are saying here is IT is equal to I1 plus I2 in our example. So our 5 amps, which is the total, is made of the sum of 3 amps and 2 amps. We're interested in the resistance as well. Let's look at the resistance. There's a little bit of mathematics. Those guys who like maths, I think they're saying yes. Now here we go. So let's look at the total resistance. The total resistance here. Now if you look at your resistors, so let's just take back to this one. Look at how the resistors are connected. So they are not in line with each other. So the resistors are connected in this way. Now let us look at the total resistance. So if you were to think of them, now if I have this resistor, and I'm connecting it to the other one, so it's like we are combining these resistors like this now. So we want to look at the total resistance that we get when we combine them in this way. So let's proceed. Now by mathematics, if you use your mathematics there, you'll notice that it is noticed that the total resistance now, it is found by this formula 1 over RT. 1 over RT is equal to 1 over R1 plus 1 over R2. Now let's not mind that mathematics that much. Let's just make things simple. So it can be simplified to RT is equal to R1 times R2 divided by R1 plus R2. I hope you get that mathematics. I hope it's not too much maths for us. So I'm saying the total resistance is equal to resistor 1 multiplied by resistor 2, all divided by resistor 1 plus resistor 2. And please note, I want you to take a note on that. This formula only applies when there are only 2 resistors in parallel. So it will apply only there when there are only 2 resistors in parallel. I think we've said quite a lot. People want to start practicing. So let's just get a few examples to work together. Now I have an example in front of me. The figure with this one, which is taken from the question 6, so shows a lighting circuit. It contains 2 bulbs, 3 switches, which are correctly wired, so there's no mistake in the wiring. Each bulb has a resistance of 960 ohms. So this is our setup. Which switches must be closed to light bulb B only? Now we want light to light bulb B only. So which switches must be closed? We have switch Z, we have switch Y, we have switch X. Which must we close to make only B? Only B. So it must only be the resistor or the light bulb B. Now I think you are thinking about that one. Let's work it together as well. But before we come to the answer to that one, now we also want to calculate the total current when all the switches are closed. So let's see how we can get to the answer there. Now if you notice in your diagram, this bulb A and bulb B are connected in parallel. That's our first step. So we need to note that these are connected in parallel. So if you look at this, the bulbs are connected in parallel. They are not connected in series. So that's one step that we need to note. So each has its own circuit within the main circuit. So the total current will branch. So there's a branch, total current will be branching. So what would happen? What should happen for bulb B to light? So for bulb B to light, we need current to pass through bulb B. So we need some current to pass through. So it means we must close this switch here. Now when we close the switch, there's a problem now. There's a gap. Now if you close this gap, do you notice that now we have a complete circuit here? Now let's see A. If you look at A, no current will pass through here. So for bulb B to light, switch Z and switch Y must be closed. I think my friends are following there. For bulb B to light, then current must pass through B, and for only B to light, current must pass through B only. Then switch Z and switch Y must be closed. there was yet another question now. The other question was, what is the total current? So in order for us to find the total current, the current that we're saying is branching there, for us to find the total current, we need to establish the total resistance first. So by this relation, RT is equal to R1, R2 divided by R1, R2. Now we need to find the total resistance first, so that we are treating this thing as if it was a single resistor. It makes life easy if we always think of the total resistance as a single resistor. So the two resistors are identical. Now identical means that each has the same resistance. So they are 960 ohms each. So if you use that formula, you substitute, you're going to have your 960 by 960 divided by 960 plus 960. Now by your mathematics, you can work that out. Of course, just use the advantage of a calculator to get that. So I'm getting your 960 times 960 there, divided by 2 times 960. So the 960s will go, so we're going to have 960 divided by 2, and that's going to give you your 480. But you have the liberty of the calculator, it will make your life easy. So you're getting 480 ohms. So the total resistance now is 480 ohms. So we're thinking of this thing like, what is the current if I have 480 ohms? Then this is the case. Now Ohm's law, which is the fundamental formula in electricity, will come to come handy here. So use V is equal to IR. We know that the voltage was 240. We are looking for the current, and the total resistance is 480. Substituting there, playing around with the numbers, you are going to get a 0.5 amps. So the current that passes through there is 0.5 amps. And I want you to note that this 0.5 amps is just an additional point that you need to look at. Otherwise, we've got the answer as 0.5 amps. Now, in the above example, the one that you're coming from, the total current is 0.5 amps. So the total current is 0.5 amps. This current will split at the branches. So it will split such that there will be a 0.2 amps in each resistor because they are identical. So we have the current splitting. So we have 0.5. So we're going to have 0.25, 0.25. I hope we are getting things right there. Now, there's something I want us to look at in resistors in parallel from the previous example. There's something interesting that we noticed there. I hope you have noticed that. Let me just take you back to this a slide here. We have 960 ohms. So we're getting a 960 ohms for each resistor. But now look at the resistance for them combined. We're getting 480. Isn't that interesting? Now let us look at that fact. We need to take note of that fact. Now in this example, consider the previous example. The resistance for one of the bulbs was 960 ohms. One of them, but there are two, but each is 960. Now look at the total. Just look at the total resistance. The total resistance for the two bulbs in parallel is now 480 ohms. Now what is happening? Notice that the resistance is even less than the resistance of one of them. Actually, it is half the amount of each. So now connecting the resistors in parallel, the resistance gets less. So that is what we are going to be noticing there. We've said a mouthful. People want to now start working. So I have an example here that would work out. So we want to see all those facts that we've gathered, and then now let's put them into good use. So I have some examples from some past papers there. So there's an example in front of us that I want us to quickly go through. So we have, the figure shows a circuit consisting of three resistors, 3 ammeters, two cells, and then these are the values of the resistances, and then A3 rates 1.7. So we have these two, and then there's this one. Now there's a combination here. If you notice, this one is connected in parallel, and this two, a combination of these two, is also connected in parallel to the third one. Now the question that we have here, state the PT across R3. What is the PT across R3? What we notice is that the answer is 2 volts. Why? It is because the voltage in resistors connected in parallel is the same. And then we are to calculate the current through resistor A. Again, we use Ohm's law. Since V and R are known, we are going to use V is equal to IR. So 2 volts is equal to I times 6 volts, and that is going to give you your 0.33 amps. I think now we've got to look at the resistance. Now the combined resistance of R1 and R2, again, we're going to use the formula that has been given. We have 2 ohms times 3 ohms over 2 plus 3. If you take your 6 over 5, you get your 1.2 ohms. So that is what we've got. Finally, let us look at the current. Calculate the current through A2. The current through A2. So if you look at the current through A2, we notice that we're going to use I1 is equal to IT is equal to I1 plus I2. So you take your 0.33 plus your 1.7 amps, it gives you your 2.03. And notice that this value that we are getting here is giving us the total current. I think now we are in a position where we would be ready maybe to go through some practice questions. Otherwise, we have noticed that those are the 2 ways in which resistors can be connected. So there's a question here. Practice question 1. The figure shows resistors connected to a battery. Calculate the electric current through the 6 ohm and show your working and give the unit. So we have a single resistor, so you can find the current there. And then we are calculating the current, so we are going to again use Ohm's law, and the answer there is going to be 2 amps. Then the 6 ohm resistor is now connected in parallel to the 4 ohms. So we're bringing the 4 ohm. Now we're getting a situation where the resistors are connected in series. So we can use all those relations that we have seen there to work out the resistors there. Now, my friends, let us just wind up what we've learned today. Today we've learned that there are 2 ways in which resistors can be connected. We can connect resistors in series, and what do you notice? Current through the resistors is the same. So those are the facts that we need to get there. Current through the resistors are the same, and the total effective resistance is the sum of the resistances in the circuit. Then number 2, we've looked at resistors connected in parallel. So there's a main, the main current is the sum of the currents in the separate branches, and then the total effective resistance can be found using this formula. Nogwazi, I think we've covered what we meant to cover. There was a lot of questions that these guys can get from their past papers, which can help them a lot.
All right. Mr. Mkonda, we have one question from one of your Form 5s. And maybe just to take you back a little bit, one of your students says that, sorry teacher, I'm lost on the calculation of a current when connected in series. I think there was a question you did there with that one student got lost, yes.
Okay, probably I may not quickly find the slide for that one. Let's just make up a question. I think we can make up one.
Okay.
So we want the current when the resistors are connected in series. So we have a resistor here. Let's say we have 2 ohms, we have 3 ohms. Now we have, let's say these numbers here. Let's try to find friendly numbers. 2 plus, let's make maybe let's use 10. We don't want to cloud ourselves with mathematics here. Let's make 10 is 2. Now what is the total current that is passing through here? Now the current that passes through here is the same throughout. So we need to find the current. So we first find the total resistance. Now the total resistance here would be R1 plus R2. So it will give us our 5 ohms. I think my learner can understand that one. Okay. So by using our Ohm's law, now we're going to say V is equal to IR. We know the voltage is 10. The current, which is what we're looking for, is I. And then the resistance that we got there, I think it was a 5. Divide by 5, so get I is equal to 2 amps. So that's how we go about doing that one.
Right. Yeah. I hope the viewer got that answer there, and they're able to understand now how to get to the answer, actually. That's very important. Mr. Mkonda, thank you very much for joining us. We hope to see you again for another physics lesson.
Thank you, Nogwazi. Yes. I think we'll still go on admiring the beauty of physics. Physics is a beauty.
I told you, it's my ex. I'm not going back there. Thank you so much, Mr. Mkonda. From Fives, do not go anywhere. We'll be right back with Mr. Aaron Matimela, who will be doing with chemistry for Form 5. We'll be right back after this.
Thank you.
Imagine your favorite personality or celebrity. Now imagine if they had to do a job that you never saw them doing. You don't have to imagine. We'll show you.
Really?
Asambege is back. This is the show that takes your favorite celebrity and personality and gives them the challenge of doing a job that some people do every day.
Yeah.
Can they do it? Will they crumble under the pressure? Find out in the brand new season of Asambege.
Better health, better life.
Better Health, Better Life is a program that speaks across all aspects of human health and wellness.
Uyeta utobuta ngaloko sawukhona ukuchazela then ke nase ngiyabeke soyafuna ke nehlela sesingakhona ke nokukusida lapho but vele nje abstinence yes.
And these diseases are viruses. We all know that some viruses are not treated.
Yeah.
But you see lapha ema symptoms. So if we treat symptoms, it's not possible to treat the disease.
Youth View and insight to help the youth build a healthy lifestyle.
When it comes to the condom itself, it needs to be used correctly and consistently.
Services are available. But the secondary abstinence is possible.
Health Tips is there to maintain and balance your health status, and Street Talks to get ordinary people's opinion in the program. And with your host, Professor Shabangu, bringing you fresh topics every week. It's a new dawn, new season, and fresh topics to keep you healthy because health is wealth.
Better health is your gateway to better life.
Bonana, buyeni nigeze tandla stokudla.
Okay, Mage. Thabo sebenzisa insipho. Angeke usebenzise amantopho.
Tandla tamitide umhlaba musinolwazi.
Kuthi tandla takho tide umhlaba kusho ukuthi akukangcola. Kumele tandla sitigeze njalo ngensipho nemanti lahamba isikhathi lesingaka 20 seconds njengoba wasifundisa teacher. Khona kutowesuka kungcola nemagciwane labangakugula.
Thabo, lalela sisi wakho phela Shilo. Kumqoka ukuthi tandla utigeze ngensipho kanye nemanti lahlobile isikhathi lesingaka 20 seconds. Mawutokudla, mawuqeda kusebenzisa umthoyi, mawuqeda kuthinza tilwane. Noma mawuqeda kushintsha linabukeni. Kumele futhi sihlande imithoyi netindzawo lesikude ngalokubulala emagciwane.
Sekusikhathe geza tandla, geza tandla, geza tandla emagciwane akana chance geza tandla manje. Tele mandu ufake insipho yonke indzawo bese uyakata ngemanti bese uyatisula.
Sanibonani.
Sawubuyile baba.
Izaba ndilethelwa nguVictor Slow. Lo mhla sidawuva kabanti ngesifo se-COVID-19. I-COVID-19 sifo lesibangwa ligciwane le-corona. Lesifo sendluliseka ngekuthi emathe laphuma emlonyeni walonaso nakakhohlela noma khuluma awele tintfweni leti kuleyo ndzawo. Bese loyo longanaso utsinza leto tintfo ngetandla aphindza atsinze emehlo, impumulo noma umlomo. Tindlela ke tekunciphisa amathuba ekuthi uthole lesifo se-COVID-19 noma ekusanzisa. Ungalandzela nathi nyathelo. Geza tanda ngensipho nemanti lahlobile noma usebenzise isanitizer. Tsimula noma ukhwehlelele ngekhatsi kwengcoza loyigobile noma usebenzise liphepha lekufinya. Lelo phepha ubese ulilahla emgqonyeni. Gwema kutsinza emehlo, impumulo nemlomo ngetandla longakatigezi. Gcina sikhala lesinganga 1 meter emkhatsini wakho nalamanye bantfu. Natsa njalo emanti lahlobile utawugcina umtimba wakho ungiloshukumako. Mawutiva ngathi awusiye lophilile, kumbe uyakhohlela, uyashisa, noma uphefumula kalukhuni, shayela inombolo lethi 977. Khumbula, hlala uphephile, hlala ekhaya.
Ngiyethemba niyeva ukuthi basicwayisa bathini boShiba. Kumqoka kakhulu ukuthi silandzele tonke letinyathelo kude singatholi futhi singasanzisi lesifo se-COVID-19. Futhi kumele sihlale ekhaya kuze siphephe, niyeva kambe?
Yebo babe.
Welcome back to our viewers, and you are still tuned in to our program Home Study. I am Nogwazi Dlamini. From 5s, it's still your turn, and with me in the studio is Mr. Aaron Matimela, whom we'll be doing with chemistry. Mr. Matimela, how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm very fine, Nogwazi. How are you?
I'm good. I'm awesome. Can you please just tell us the objectives of this lesson today?
Okay, thank you very much. Well, the main focus of this lesson, viewers at home, is to open a door in the learner's mind to begin to appreciate processes that in everyday life we enjoy their outcomes. But unfortunately, we never get to know what actually happens behind the process.
Okay.
Like the idea of having your image be printed on a paper as your photo. Not many understand how we get the image to be on the paper.
Okay.
So this lesson, one of its focus is to help you understand the chemistry behind such processes.
All right, okay. From 5s, get ready for your lesson. And just to remind you, we are live on YouTube and on Facebook. Feel free to send us any questions that you might have for this lesson on our WhatsApp number. Please do not call us. Text us any questions you might have, and we'll forward them to Mr. Matimela. Mr. Matimela, ready when you are.
Yes, I am ready, and
Okay.
I would like to welcome my viewers at home, and as much as they also welcome me.
Yes.
Let us proceed with the lesson. Viewers at home, understand that this lesson is part 2 of the lesson that we had on Monday. It is the lesson on redox reactions, or reduction and oxidation reactions. Now today we'll be focusing mainly on the part of redox as transfer of electrons. I hope my learners have gotten that note very well. Well, having said so, let me quickly recap the previous lesson, what we learned in the previous lesson. Well, in the previous lesson, I hope you recall very well that we came to the conclusion that oxidation, sorry for that, my viewers at home. We came to the conclusion that oxidation, in terms of oxygen or hydrogen gain or loss, it is the gain of oxygen and it is the loss of hydrogen. I hope you got that one right. And reduction, we concluded that it is the loss of oxygen and the gain of hydrogen. And I also advise you to note that the definition when it comes to hydrogen seems to to be the opposite of the definition of oxidation and reduction in terms of oxygen gain or loss. So please take note. We also saw that oxidizing agents and reducing agents as substances that cause, for example, oxidizing agent causes a substance to be oxidized and therefore it is reduced itself, whereas the reducing agents also get oxidized in the process. Well, for today, I hope to get all learners understand or be able to define oxidation and reduction in terms of electron transfer. So our main lesson is defining oxidation in terms of electron transfer, that is electron gain or loss. Well, of course, we will also look at light energy that as a facilitator or as the energy behind oxidation and reduction reactions. I also have prepared some examination type questions for the learner at home to practice a bit as a conclusion to the whole lesson. Now, to get into our main discussion, you understand that for compounds to form, they either form because atoms rearrange themselves to form a new compound, but they also form when the electrons of those atoms are exchanged. Now, the slide I have here, I want to illustrate to you that if we take, for example, an element like sodium, sorry, my drawing here is quite poor. Sodium as an element, when it has to react with another element, say chlorine. Now you notice that this is a metal and a non-metal atoms reacting. Now the result of this kind of reaction is that the metals, for example my sodium here, they will exchange their electrons. They will give away their electrons to the non-metals. In the process, the two will become ions, charged atoms, and attract. Hence, they form a new product. Now, this exchange of electrons, when a compound forms through exchange of electrons, it can be described as a redox reaction. For example, sodium chloride. When we want to form sodium chloride, we have said already that sodium exchanges its electrons with chlorine so that sodium chloride is formed. Now, to explain this process in terms of, as redox reaction, we split the equation into two. We use half equations. One will actually show what happens to the sodium going on to the product. Another one will show us what happens to the chlorine going on to the product. Now the sodium, actually what will happen to the sodium is that it will gain electrons, because in the sodium, in the compound sodium chloride, sodium exists as sodium ions, whereas the chlorine also exists as the chloride ions. Now, the reaction now is that the sodium atoms will actually lose electrons to become a charged atom, sodium ion, like this. Now, when a metal loses an electron to become charged, we say it has been oxidized. So, in this reaction, we say sodium loses electrons to become oxidized. But I want you to note this, my learner at home, that when writing these chemical equations, there is a rule that you do not subtract electrons. So because you don't subtract electrons, to show loss of electrons, you rather transpose the electrons lost and write them on the right-hand side of the equation. You transpose them and write them on the right-hand side of the equation, so that at the electrons are at the end of the equation, the electrons appear on both the right-hand side and the left-hand side of the reaction. Now, sodium, we say it actually gains electrons to become negatively charged. Now, when a substance loses electrons so that it becomes an ion in the reaction, we say that is oxidation. Loss of electrons is oxidation. And when a substance gains electrons to become an ion, usually it's nonmetals that behave this way, we refer to that as reduction. So I hope you have gotten that one right. Now, having completed the three definitions of redox reactions in terms of oxygen gain or loss, hydrogen gain or loss, and today we've looked at electron transfer, gain or loss still. Now we can go on to look at processes that occur because energy facilitates those processes, redox processes. Now, one of them is photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is one process by which plants make glucose by combining carbon dioxide and water in the presence of chlorophyll and sunlight to make the glucose. Now, we've always known that sunlight is involved. Now, we only didn't discuss that this whole process is a redox process. So the carbon dioxide actually, if you can go to the next slide, you can see that what happens in this process as energy is actually facilitating the process is that the carbon dioxide, if I may, you follow the arrow, the carbon dioxide gains hydrogen so that the carbon dioxide is reduced to glucose, whereas the water loses hydrogen to become pure water. Now, by this way, we are able to show that photosynthesis is a redox reaction. And photosynthesis, in photosynthesis, there is a loss and gain of hydrogen so that it qualifies as a redox reaction. Another process that makes use of light energy to occur, which is also a redox reaction, is photography. Now, it is an old technique that was applied to get images to print on a paper, on a film, a paper called a film. It's an old technique whereby it was discovered that silver bromide in this case, when they are exposed to light, they have a tendency to break down and change to black, because a silver salt usually it's colorless in a substance like gelatin. So this discovery led to the ability to print photographic images on a paper. Now, the chemistry behind the process of photography is that the silver salts, such as silver bromide, when they are exposed to light, they will break up. Now, when silver salt breaks up, it will give out the silver ions. I want to show this one very well here. Maybe I should use a fresh page. The silver bromide salt, when it breaks down, it is going to yield silver ions and bromine ions. So these are the particles that will come out from this compound. Now, when this happens, because these substances will not exist as ions like this, it means, actually what this means is that for the silver to combine with the bromine, it was these ions that combined. So when we break them, it means the silver will gain, it will gain the electrons that it had lost. Yes, the silver will gain the electrons that it had lost, so that it goes back to exist as a silver atom. Now, when a substance gains electrons, we say that is reduction. And the bromine ions, when they lose the electrons which they had gained to become an ion in the compound there, when they lose those electrons, that is oxidation. So photographic, the technique of photography is itself a redox reaction, in that the silver salt which is on the film is made to decompose and give back the ions that were in the salt, and those ions are at the same time oxidized or reduced back to the original ions that were in the compound. Well, I don't know if my learners have gotten this one right, but I want to believe that if they can look through this one, they will understand how photography is a redox reaction, and actually the process by which the compound decomposes and each of the ions are oxidized or reduced to their original elements. Now, to end our lesson and conclude the whole chapter, I have a few questions that I would like the learners at home to try, because I have taken them from a past examination papers. There are actually two questions. So question 1 has two parts. There's A and B. Question 1A, it says the equation shows one of the key reactions in the extraction of iron from its ore. Now here is the equation here, where iron 3 oxide reacts with carbon monoxide, and the product is iron, pure iron, and carbon dioxide. Now, first question, name the reducing agent in this reaction. Of course, this reaction is a redox reaction. Now, name the reducing agent in this reaction. Part B says, describe the reaction shown in this reaction. Well, I don't know if the learners at home will take their time to work out the answers, but if you can be quick to solve the question here, the answers, to give the answers, is that the reducing agent in this reaction is the carbon monoxide. The carbon monoxide is the reducing agent. So if you were able to say that, you get your 1 mark. And then the reduction shown in this reaction is that the iron 3 oxide loses oxygen and become pure iron. So that is the reduction which has occurred in this reaction. Now, the next question, it says transition elements have various uses because of their properties. One of these elements is silver and is used in photograph. Name a silver salt that is used in photograph. Part B says, state the effect of light on silver salt. And then part C, write an equation, ionic equation to show what is happening to the silver ions when light strikes the silver. Now, if I can also give the learners the solutions to this in conclusion, is that the silver salt in photography is silver bromide. Silver bromide. Yes, it is silver bromide. And then the effect of light on silver salt is that the light breaks down the silver bromide into silver ions and bromine ions. That is one mark. Light breaks down the silver bromide into silver ions and bromine ions. And then the silver ions are reduced by gaining electrons to silver, while the bromine ions are oxidized to become bromine atoms. And then the last part is the equation. Last part is asking you to write the ionic equation to show what is happening to the silver ions. The equation is this. Two silver atoms gain two electrons, so that you have two atoms of silver forming there. If you get all these correct, I'm very happy with that. It means you are safe for the exam. Now, in conclusion, we've said that oxidation is gain of oxygen, and it is the loss of hydrogen and also the loss of electrons. I hope it's clear. And then reduction is loss of oxygen, is gain of hydrogen, and is also gain of electrons. I hope you are also happy with that one. Whereas oxidizing agents are substances that oxidize another substance and themselves are reduced. Usually an oxidizing agent is reduced. Whereas reducing agents, they reduce other substances and they are oxidized themselves. And also redox reactions are facilitated by light. We've seen that photosynthesis is one of them, and photography is another one. In photosynthesis, we've said the carbon dioxide is reduced by hydrogen to glucose by gaining hydrogen, whereas the water is oxidized by losing hydrogen to pure water. And then in photography, we've said that silver ions are reduced to silver atoms by gaining electrons, whereas the bromine ions are oxidized to bromine atoms by losing electrons. Thank you very much. Dear learners at home, I hope you have followed and you have taken notes, and you have also benefited in the whole chapter on redox reactions, and I can promise you are safe for the examination.
Thank you very much, Mr. Matimela, and we hope that we'll see you again for another chemistry lesson.
Yes, I also hope so, since we still have to give more lessons through this platform.
Most definitely. From 5s, that was it for your chemistry lesson. But do not worry, Mr. Matimela will be back for another chemistry lesson. Send your questions through. We'll answer them in another session. Me and Lerato will be right back right after this.
Buhle bethu imvelo yethu, buhle bethu tindzawo tethu, indalo yashada nemasiko kuhle kwethu, kuvakasha kwethula umthwalo emahlombe ethu, hloma ngwane vuka uvakashe, indlela uyikhombe etindzaweni tethu, temvelo nembukiso ungcebeleke uthathe netitfombe. Lalela ke nangu sonkondlo waseswatini akutekela, ayibeka indzaba ayihlela, kuhle kwelijaha lishela ngiyakutshela, diningi tindzawo longativakashela, hloma ngwane vuka uvakashe la, phana lapha kuvakasha kuyayelapha enhlitiyo kanye nemicondvo kuyawuphumuda, kugcinisa buhlobo nebungane losebundenga-ndenga, with a trip to Mantenga Falls or a sip among friends of Sibebe Brew on Sibebe Mountain, or perhaps your cup of tea is backpacking and horse riding, sightseeing the seamless streams and springs that stream across the gorgeous valleys of the mountainous kingdoms of Eswatini, we have you covered. Hlo mangwane vuka uvakashe, buhle bethu yimvelo yethu, buhle bethu ngabuthola nasebantwini bethu.
Welcome back, viewers. Unfortunately, that was the last lesson for the day, but do not worry, we'll be back again tomorrow. Lerato, how was your day?
Well, my day was fantastic, actually. Today I learned a lot about Siswati.
Really?
Yeah, but I just learned a lot.
Well, you started out speaking Siswati, so today was your Siswati day.
It was my Siswati day, guys.
All right. Just to remind our viewers about our social media platforms, we are live on YouTube, obviously, and Facebook, and do not be afraid to subscribe on our YouTube page so that you get notifications when we are live. Also, feel free to use our WhatsApp number for any questions that you might have. I cannot emphasize this enough. Please do not call us. Send through questions. Do not call us. Lerato?
Well, the lessons for today are still available on YouTube in case you've missed our episodes.
Yes, Lerato, please tell us about tomorrow's timetable.
Well, tomorrow's timetable is as follows. We have social studies for the grade 7 learners from 2 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. And then we have religious education for the Form 3s from 2:30 p.m. to 3:08 p.m. And then we have English language JC Form 3 learners, which is from 3:08 p.m. to 3:45 p.m. And then we have English language for the Form 5s, EGCSE, from 3:45 p.m. to 4:25 p.m. And then lastly, we have Siswati from 4:25 p.m. to 5 p.m.
Thank you very much, Lerato, for that. And we hope to see you guys again tomorrow. Remember, do not forget to social distance. See you guys tomorrow. Bye.